Rachel had always been good at being alone. Not lonely, she'd tell herself. Just alone. There was a difference, wasn't there? Lonely meant you wanted something you didn't have. Alone meant you were fine with what you had, which in her case was a quiet apartment, a successful freelance design business, and a cat named Toast who didn't ask questions or expect anything more than food and the occasional head scratch. 8 years. That's how long it had been since she'd let anyone get close. 8 years since the relationship that had left her feeling like shattered glass, carefully swept up but never quite whole again. Her younger sister Amy used to call every week, practically begging her to come to dinner parties or set her up with someone from work. But Rachel had perfected the art of polite excuses. She was busy. She had a deadline. She wasn't feeling well. Eventually, Amy stopped asking quite so often, though the worry in her voice never really went away. At 33, Rachel had built a life that felt safe, predictable. She worked from home, took online yoga classes, ordered her groceries for delivery. The world outside her apartment felt too bright, too loud, too full of people who might hurt her if she let them. She knew it wasn't healthy. She'd read enough articles and heard enough of Amy's gentle lectures to know that. But knowing something and changing it were two very different things. The problem started with Mrs. Patterson, her biggest client and the reason Rachel could afford her rent. Mrs. Patterson owned a chain of boutique hotels and had been working with Rachel for 3 years, always through email and video calls. Rachel liked it that way, professional, distant, safe, but then Mrs. Patterson called one Tuesday morning with an unusual request. I need you to come to the spring fundraiser at Riverside Elementary this Saturday. Mrs. Patterson had said in that tone that didn't leave room for argument. We're sponsoring it, and I want you to see the space, meet some people, get a feel for the community vibe. The new hotel is all about local connection, remember? Rachel's stomach had dropped. A school gymnasium full of families and noise and expectations. The thought alone made her want to crawl back into bed. She tried every excuse she could think of. She was behind on work. She might be getting sick. Her cat might need to go to the vet, but Mrs. Patterson wasn't having it. Rachel, honey, I know you prefer working remotely, but this is important. Just 2 hours. You can do 2 hours. There was something almost maternal in her voice, like she understood more than Rachel wanted her to. So that's how Rachel found herself on a Saturday afternoon, standing in front of her closet, trying to remember what normal people wore to community events. She settled on jeans and a sweater, nothing too formal, nothing that would make her stand out. She spent an extra 10 minutes in her car in the school parking lot, watching families stream in, telling herself she could do this. It was just 2 hours. 120 minutes. She could survive anything for 120 minutes. The gymnasium was overwhelming in a way she hadn't prepared for. Bright streamers hung from the ceiling. Tables lined the walls, each one covered with baked goods or craft projects or raffle items. Children ran in circles, their laughter echoing off the walls. Parents clustered in groups, talking and laughing in that easy way that seemed so foreign to Rachel now. She clutched her portfolio like a shield and searched desperately for Mrs. Patterson's familiar face. That's when she saw him. He was crouched down near the far wall, eye level with a little girl who couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. The girl was crying, her face scrunched up in that way kids do when they're trying to be brave but failing. The man wasn't rushing her or telling her to stop. He was just listening, nodding, one hand resting gently on her shoulder. After a moment, he produced a tissue from his pocket like a magician pulling out a rabbit, and the little girl laughed through her tears. Then he did something that made Rachel's chest tighten in a way she didn't quite understand. He noticed the girl's shoelace was untied, and without making a big deal of it, he tied it for her. Not quickly, not impatiently. He tied it carefully, double knotting it, then tapped her shoe and said something that made her giggle. The little girl threw her arms around his neck, and he hugged her back with the kind of easy affection that seemed so simple, and yet so impossibly complicated to Rachel. She realized she'd been staring when the man stood up, holding the little girl's hand, and his eyes briefly met hers across the room. He had the kind face of someone who'd seen hard things but hadn't let them make him hard. Tired eyes, but a genuine smile. Before Rachel could look away, he gave her a small nod, the kind strangers give each other in passing, and led the little girl toward the cookie table. Rachel, there you are! Mrs. Patterson appeared at her elbow, warm and perfumed and already pulling her toward a group of people near the stage. Rachel tried to focus as introductions were made, as hands were shaken, as someone explained the fundraiser was for new art supplies and a playground renovation. But her mind kept drifting back to the man with the tired eyes and the patient way he'd tied that shoelace. "And this is Thomas Chen," Mrs. Patterson was saying, and Rachel's attention snapped back just in time to see the man from earlier walking toward them, the little girl still holding his hand. "He's heading up the volunteer committee. Thomas, this is Rachel Hart, my brilliant designer." His handshake was firm but not aggressive. His palm was warm. "Nice to meet you," he said, and his voice matched his face, kind and genuine. "Hope Lily didn't chase you away earlier. She's got a lot of energy." "That's my daughter," he added when Rachel must have looked confused. The little girl, Lily, was now partially hiding behind his leg, peeking out at Rachel with curious eyes. "Oh no, she's fine," Rachel managed, then felt stupid because she and the girl hadn't even interacted. "I mean, you both seemed fine." I didn't mean to stare." Thomas smiled, and it crinkled the corners of his eyes in a way that suggested he smiled often. Despite those tired eyes. "No worries. I know we're a spectacle. Single dad at a school event. We're like unicorns, apparently." There was no bitterness in his voice, just a kind of resigned humor. Mrs. Patterson launched into explaining the project, the hotel, the community partnership, and Rachel tried to focus. But she kept noticing little things. The way Thomas would absently smooth down Lily's hair. The way Lily would tug his hand when she wanted attention, and he'd immediately crouch down to her level. The easy, comfortable love between them that seemed so different from everything Rachel had known. When the meeting wrapped up, Rachel made her excuses and headed for the door, feeling like she'd run a marathon. But near the exit she heard a small voice, "Daddy, why was that lady looking at us?" Rachel froze, pretending to check her phone. Thomas's reply was quiet but clear. "Maybe she thought you were pretty. Or maybe she looked sad and seeing us made her feel better. People look at each other for all kinds of reasons, sweetheart." Was she sad? I don't know. But sometimes people are sad in ways we can't see. That's why we should always be kind, right? Right, even when we're sad too? Especially then. Rachel made it to her car before the tears started. She didn't even know why she was crying. Something about that exchange, about the gentleness in Thomas's voice, about the way he talked to his daughter like she was a whole person worthy of real answers. Something about seeing what love looked like when it was healthy and safe and good. She drove home and spent the rest of the evening on her couch, toast purring on her lap, thinking about tired eyes and tied shoelaces and the way a stranger's kindness could crack something open inside you that you didn't even know was closed. She told herself it was nothing. One brief meeting. She'd probably never see them again. Mrs. Patterson would handle the rest through email the way she always did. Life would go back to normal, to safe, to alone. But that night, for the first time in 8 years, Rachel wondered if maybe alone wasn't the same as fine after all. Rachel didn't expect to see Thomas Chen again. She'd convinced herself that the fundraiser was a one-time thing, a brief glimpse into a world that wasn't hers. But life, it seemed, had other plans. The first time was at Morrison's coffee shop 3 days after the fundraiser. Rachel had finally run out of coffee at home and couldn't bring herself to wait for a delivery. It was early, just past 7 in the morning, and the shop was mostly empty except for a few people grabbing drinks on their way to work. She was standing in line, rehearsing her order in her head the way she always did, when she heard a familiar voice. "1 hot chocolate, extra marshmallows, and a black coffee, please." Rachel turned, and there he was. Thomas, looking somehow more tired than he had on Saturday, wearing wrinkled khakis and a navy sweater. And beside him, in a purple backpack that was almost as big as she was, stood Lily, her hair in 2 slightly crooked pigtails. Their eyes met, and Thomas smiled, that same genuine smile that crinkled his eyes. "Rachel, right? The designer?" She nodded, suddenly aware of her own appearance. She hadn't even brushed her hair properly, just thrown it into a messy bun. No makeup, old jeans, the sweatshirt with the coffee stain she kept meaning to get rid of. "Yeah, hi. Thomas, right?" As if she hadn't been thinking about him for 3 days straight. "Guilty," he gestured to Lily. "This is my daughter, Lily. We're on our morning coffee run before school. Well, hot chocolate for her, coffee for me. I can't function without it." Lily looked up at Rachel with those curious eyes. "You were at my school. You looked sad, Lily," Thomas said gently. But Rachel could see he wasn't really scolding her, just redirecting. "It's okay," Rachel found herself saying. I wasn't sad. Maybe just a little nervous. I don't go to many events like that. Why not? Lily asked with the blunt honesty only children can manage. Thomas put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. That's a personal question, sweetie. Remember what we talked about? Oh yeah, sorry. Lily looked genuinely apologetic. Daddy says I ask too many questions sometimes. I think questions are good, Rachel said, surprising herself. It means you're curious. That's not a bad thing. They got their drinks and somehow ended up sitting at the same table, though Rachel couldn't quite remember how it happened. Thomas explained that this was their routine every morning. Get hot chocolate, walk to school, and he'd head to his job at an architectural firm downtown. Lily chatted about her class, about her best friend who was moving away, about the hamster in their classroom named Professor Whiskers. Rachel mostly listened, but she found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. There was something safe about Thomas. He didn't push, didn't ask invasive questions, didn't seem to want anything from her. He was just there, present, kind. The second time was at the grocery store 2 weeks later. Rachel was debating between two brands of cereal she never bought, but thought she might try when a hand reached past her for the exact same box. Sorry, Thomas stopped when he saw her. Oh, Rachel, we really need to stop meeting like this. She found herself laughing, actually laughing. What, you don't enjoy stalking me through the city? Caught me. I have a whole chart at home. Places Rachel might go. Coffee shops, check. Grocery stores, check. Next, I'll try the library. It was a joke, just a silly joke, but it felt like the most normal interaction Rachel had experienced in years. They ended up walking through the store together. Neither really acknowledging they were doing it, just falling into step. Thomas explained he was cooking dinner for Lily, trying a new recipe for teriyaki chicken that he'd probably mess up. She's a good sport about it, though, he said, tossing vegetables into his cart. Last week I burned the rice so badly the smoke alarm went off. She just looked at me and said, "Cereal night?" Smart kid. How long have you been doing this? Rachel asked. The single dad thing, I mean. Something shifted in his expression, a shadow passing over those tired eyes. 3 years. My wife passed away. Cancer. It was fast, which was maybe a blessing, but it didn't feel like one at the time. I'm sorry, Rachel said, and meant it. Thanks. It's weird, you know? People either avoid the topic completely, or they drown you in pity. You did neither. So thanks for that, too. They parted ways in the parking lot, but Rachel sat in her car for a long time afterward, thinking about loss and resilience and how Thomas seemed to carry his grief without letting it crush him. The third time was in the park. Rachel had started forcing herself to take lunch breaks outside, part of her therapist's old advice that she'd finally decided to try. She'd bring a sandwich and sit on a bench near the duck pond, watching the water and trying to convince herself that being outside was good for her. That's where Thomas found her, or rather, where Lily found her. The little girl came running up, pigtails flying, with Thomas jogging behind her. It's the sad lady from coffee, Lily announced. I'm really sorry, Thomas said, slightly out of breath. We come here after school sometimes. She's got eyes like a hawk. I'm not sad today, Rachel told Lily and realized it was mostly true. Good. Do you want to feed the ducks? Daddy brought bread. Rachel glanced at Thomas, who shrugged with a smile. She's very persuasive. Fair warning. And that's how Rachel ended up spending an hour tossing bread to ducks while Lily provided running commentary on each duck's personality and backstory. That one's Gerald. He's grumpy but has a good heart. That one's Princess Quackers. She's the leader, but she's fair about it. Thomas sat on the bench beside Rachel while Lily ran around, carefully supervised but given room to explore. She's got quite an imagination, Rachel said. Gets it from her mom. My wife used to make up stories about everything. The characters on cereal boxes, the people we'd see at the grocery store, random clouds. She turned the whole world into a story. His voice was warm with memory, not heavy with grief. That sounds beautiful. It was. It is. I try to keep that alive for Lily. The wonder, you know? The idea that life can be magical even when it's hard. Rachel watched Lily spin in circles, arms out, head tilted back to watch the sky. You're doing a good job. Some days I believe that. Other days I'm pretty sure I'm winging it and hoping for the best. Isn't that what everyone does? Thomas looked at her then, really looked at her. Maybe, but some people make it look easier than others. You seem like someone who's figured things out. Rachel almost laughed at the irony. I'm really not. I'm probably the least figured out person you'll meet. Well, you're in good company then. After that, the meetings didn't feel accidental anymore. They started seeing each other at the coffee shop most mornings. Thomas would wave her over, and she'd sit with them while Lily chattered, and Thomas would share a knowing smile over his daughter's head. They'd run into each other at the grocery store and compare notes on what they were cooking. Though Rachel's meals were usually frozen dinners, she was too embarrassed to admit. One evening, Thomas texted her. She didn't even remember giving him her number, but she must have at some point. The text said, "Lily drew you a picture. She insists I deliver it. Coffee tomorrow?" The picture was a crayon drawing of 3 people feeding ducks. A tall man, a small girl with pigtails, and a woman with long hair. At the top, in careful child handwriting, it said, "My friend Rachel." Rachel cried over that picture for 20 minutes. Then she framed it and put it on her desk where she could see it while she worked. The weeks started to blend together in a way that felt less like sameness and more like routine. Good routine. She looked forward to her mornings now, to seeing Thomas's tired smile and Lily's bright energy. She started choosing her clothes more carefully, though she told herself it didn't mean anything. She even started wearing a bit of makeup again, just some mascara and lip gloss. Amy noticed during one of their weekly calls. "You sound different," her sister said. "Different how?" "I don't know, lighter? Have you been doing something different?" Rachel almost told her about Thomas and Lily. Almost. But saying it out loud felt like it would make it real, and making it real meant it could end. And if it ended, it would hurt. So she just said she'd been getting out more, which was technically true, but inside something was shifting. The walls she'd built so carefully were developing cracks. Not breaking, not yet, but definitely cracking. And the strange thing was, it didn't terrify her quite as much as she thought it would. One morning, about 6 weeks after that first meeting at the fundraiser, Thomas showed up at the coffee shop alone. Rachel felt a spike of panic. "Where's Lily?" "Sleepover at her friend's house. First one since her mom died. I'm about 70% confident I'll survive the separation anxiety. The other 30% is still up for debate." They got their drinks and sat down, and for the first time, it was just the two of them. No buffer, no distraction. The silence felt heavy at first. "Can I ask you something?" Thomas said finally. Rachel's heart hammered. "Okay. Why do you always look like you're about to run?" The question caught her off guard. She could have denied it, could have made a joke. But something about the way he asked, with genuine curiosity and no judgment, made her tell the truth. "Because running is easier than staying. Staying means people can hurt you. Running means you're in control." Thomas nodded slowly. "I get that. After my wife died, I almost moved. Packed up everything. Looked at houses in different states. Thought maybe a fresh start would hurt less. Why didn't you?" "Because running wouldn't have changed anything. The hurt would have come with me, and Lily deserved to have roots, not just escape routes." He paused, stirring his coffee absently. "But I understand the instinct. When something hurts bad enough, you want to make sure it never happens again." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. This man, this kind, tired, patient man, somehow understood. Without her having to explain all the ugly details, all the ways she'd been broken, he just understood. "I'm not very good at this," she whispered. "At what?" "At people. At letting them in. I'm better alone." Thomas reached across the table and gently touched her hand. Just touched it, didn't grab it or hold it hostage. Just a soft connection. "Maybe you're not better alone. Maybe you're just safer. But safe isn't the same as happy, is it?" And that's when Rachel realized she was in trouble, because this man, with his daughter and his grief and his terrible cooking and his patient kindness, was becoming important to her. And important meant vulnerable. And vulnerable meant she could get hurt again. But as she sat there, his hand warm on hers in a coffee shop on a random Tuesday morning, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, the risk might be worth it. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of ordinary day that becomes extraordinary because of what goes wrong. Rachel had been in meetings all morning, virtual ones thankfully, presenting designs to clients who couldn't decide between fonts. By 3 o'clock, she needed to get out of her apartment before she screamed at her computer screen. She decided to drive to the art supply store across town, the one with the good paper stock. Her car had been making a weird noise for a week, but she'd been ignoring it the way she ignored most problems she didn't want to deal with. Turns out problems don't go away just because you pretend they don't exist. The car died 3 blocks from Thomas's neighborhood. Just sputtered and gave up, right there in the middle of a residential street. Rain had started falling about 10 minutes earlier, and now it was coming down in sheets. Rachel sat there gripping the steering wheel, feeling tears build behind her eyes. Of course this would happen. Of course. She tried calling a tow truck first. The estimated wait time was 3 hours. She tried calling Amy, but it went to voicemail. Her sister was at work, probably in a meeting. Rachel sat there for 15 minutes, rain hammering on the roof, trying to figure out what to do. Then, feeling pathetic and desperate and angry at herself for both, she pulled up Thomas's contact. They'd been texting for weeks now, mostly about nothing. Coffee times, funny things Lily had said, random observations. But this felt different. This felt like asking for help, like admitting she needed someone. Her finger hovered over the call button for a full minute. Finally, she pressed it. He answered on the second ring. Rachel, hey, everything okay? The concern in his voice almost made her hang up. I'm sorry to bother you. My car broke down and I'm stuck in the rain and I don't really know anyone else in this area and… Where are you? She told him, hating how small her voice sounded. I'm 10 minutes away. Actually, I'm like 7 minutes away, but I'll say 10 to be safe. Don't move. Thomas, you don't have to… Rachel, don't move. I'm already getting my keys. He showed up in 6 minutes. Rachel saw his car pull up behind hers and then he was at her window, umbrella in hand. Lily visible in the back seat with her own small pink umbrella. He opened Rachel's door like it was the most natural thing in the world. Come on, he said. Let's get you out of this mess. They made it to his car with only minimal soaking. Lily immediately handed Rachel a handful of napkins from the glove compartment. You're all wet, she observed. Daddy, she's all wet. I see that, sweetheart. That's why we're going to take her home and get her warmed up while we wait for the tow truck. Rachel started to protest, to say she could just wait in her car, but Thomas gave her a look that was both gentle and firm. Rachel, let me help you. Please. His house was small but warm, the kind of home that felt lived in and loved. There were Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator, a blanket fort in the living room that had clearly been there for days, dishes in the sink. It was messy in the way real life is messy, and something about that made Rachel's chest ache. Thomas handed her a towel and one of his sweaters, way too big but dry and smelling like laundry detergent and something else, something that was just him. Bathrooms down the hall. Take your time. When she came back, he'd made tea. Lily was at the kitchen table working on homework, and Thomas was helping her sound out words. Rachel stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching. The kitchen light was warm and golden. Outside, the rain continued to fall. And here in this small house was a scene so ordinary and yet so perfect that it made her want to cry. Come sit, Thomas said, noticing her. Tea's getting cold, Rachel sat. She watched Thomas help Lily with multiplication tables, his patience infinite as his daughter struggled with sevens. He never got frustrated, never made her feel stupid. When she finally got one right, he high-fived her like she just won a championship. Can Rachel help me? Lily asked suddenly. She's smart. I can tell. If she wants to, Thomas said. But she doesn't have to. She's had a rough day. Rachel found herself scooting closer. What are we working on? For the next hour, she helped Lily with homework. Thomas made dinner, something simple with pasta and vegetables, and the smell filled the kitchen. At some point, Rachel realized she was happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not just content or distracted, but truly at peace in a way she hadn't been in years. They ate together, the three of them, and Lily told stories about school and her friend who could burp the alphabet and the substitute teacher who wore funny hats. Thomas and Rachel exchanged amused glances over the girl's head, sharing that universal language of adults dealing with kid logic. After dinner, after Lily had gone to play in her room, Rachel and Thomas sat on the couch with fresh tea. The rain had slowed to a gentle patter. The tow truck had come and gone, taking her car to the shop. Thomas had offered to drive her home later, and she'd accepted because what else could she do? Thank you, Rachel said quietly, for all of this. You didn't have to, I know, but I wanted to. He was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Okay. When my wife was sick, people helped us constantly, brought food, watched Lily, drove us to appointments. I felt helpless, you know? like I couldn't control anything. But people kept showing up, kept helping, and eventually I realized that letting them help wasn't weakness. It was just being human. Rachel stared into her tea. I'm not used to that. I know. I can tell. But maybe that's something you could practice. Being human. Letting people care about you. What if they hurt me? The question came out before she could stop it, raw and vulnerable. Thomas set down his tea and turned to face her. They might. People mess up. People leave, sometimes not by choice. People say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or disappoint you. That's the risk, so why take it? Because the alternative is being alone. And not the peaceful kind of alone. The kind where you're surrounded by walls you built yourself and wondering if anyone would even notice if you disappeared. Rachel's breath caught. How did you? Because I've been there. After my wife died, I thought about it. Building walls, pushing everyone away. Lily was the only reason I didn't. She needed me to be human, to be present. To show her that love doesn't end just because life gets hard. Tears were sliding down Rachel's face now, and she didn't even try to stop them. Thomas didn't move to hug her or pat her shoulder. He just sat there present, giving her space to fall apart. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? Of this, of you, of caring about you and Lily and having it all taken away. Rachel, look at me. She did, and his eyes were so kind it hurt. I can't promise you won't get hurt. I can't promise I'll always say the right thing or that life won't throw garbage at us. But I can promise that I won't hurt you on purpose. I can promise that I see you, the real you, walls and fear and all of it. And I'm not going anywhere. You don't even know me. Not really. Not the ugly parts. So tell me the ugly parts. Tell me why you're so afraid. And there, in his living room with the rain falling outside and Lily singing to herself in the other room, Rachel did. She told him about her ex, about the way he'd slowly torn her down until she didn't recognize herself. The manipulation, the gaslighting, the way he'd made her feel like she was crazy for having feelings. She told him about leaving, about rebuilding, about deciding she was safer alone than risking that kind of pain again. Thomas listened to all of it. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer empty platitudes, didn't try to fix it. He just listened, and when she was done, when she was empty and exhausted, he did something that changed everything. He reached across the couch and took her hand. Not a grab, not a demand. Just a gentle touch, his palm warm against hers. That person who hurt you was wrong, he said firmly. You're not crazy. You're not too much or too sensitive or any of the things I'm guessing he said you were. You're someone who loved deeply and got punished for it. And that's not fair. But it doesn't mean you're broken. I feel broken. You're hurt. There's a difference. Hurt can heal. You can heal. I don't know how. One day at a time. One handhold at a time. One moment where you choose to trust instead of run. He squeezed her hand gently. And you don't have to do it alone. Rachel looked down at their joined hands. His was bigger than hers, calloused from work, warm and steady. She could pull away. She could make an excuse, get him to drive her home, go back to her safe apartment and her safe life and her safe walls. Or she could stay. She could hold on. She could choose just for this moment to be brave. I don't know how to do this, she said. Do what? Let someone care about me. Let myself care about someone. I've forgotten how it works. Thomas smiled, that gentle smile that crinkled his eyes. You're doing it right now. You're here. You're talking. You're holding my hand. That's enough. Is it really that simple? Sometimes. Not always, but sometimes, he paused. You don't have to figure everything out tonight, Rachel. You don't have to commit to anything or promise anything. Just stay for now. Drink your tea. Let yourself be here. So she did. She stayed. She drank her tea. She let Thomas tell her about his day, about a project at work, about Lily's upcoming school play where she'd been cast as a tree and was taking the role very seriously. She laughed at his stories. She felt the warmth of his hand in hers, and slowly, carefully, she let herself imagine that maybe this could be safe. Too, maybe trust didn't have to mean destruction. Later, when Thomas drove her home, they sat in his car outside her apartment for a few minutes. The rain had stopped completely and the streetlights reflected in the puddles. Thank you, Rachel said. For today. For everything. You're welcome. But Rachel? You don't have to thank me for basic human kindness. That should be the standard, not the exception. She looked at him, at this man who'd shown her more gentleness in a few hours than she'd known in years. Can I ask you something? Always. Why me? Why are you being so patient with me when I'm such a mess? Thomas was quiet for a moment. Because I think you're worth being patient with, and because I know what it's like to be scared. And maybe, he hesitated, maybe because I like you, Rachel. The real you, the scared, messy you. I like who you are. Rachel's heart was hammering so hard she was sure he could hear it. I like you too. That's what scares me, I know. But maybe being scared doesn't have to mean running. Maybe it can mean staying and seeing what happens. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Then before she could overthink it, she leaned across the seat and hugged him. Just a brief hug, arms around his shoulders, face pressed against his jacket. He hugged her back without hesitation, solid and warm and safe. Good night, Thomas. Good night, Rachel. Text me when you're inside? She did, and he responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji. But as Rachel got ready for bed that night, wearing his too big sweater because she couldn't bring herself to take it off yet, she realized something important. For the first time in 8 years, she wanted to try. She wanted to be brave. She wanted to see if maybe, just maybe, love could be different this time. And that thought didn't terrify her quite as much as it probably should have. The weeks after that rainy Tuesday felt different to Rachel. Not easier exactly, but different. Like she'd crossed some invisible line and couldn't quite go back to who she'd been before. Thomas didn't push, didn't demand anything, but he was there. Consistently, reliably there. They started having coffee together every morning, but now it felt deliberate rather than accidental. He'd text her the night before to confirm, and she'd find herself looking forward to it, planning her mornings around those 30 minutes at Morrison's coffee shop. Lily would chatter about school. Thomas would nurse his black coffee and look at Rachel with those warm eyes. And slowly, so slowly Rachel barely noticed it happening, she started to relax. One Saturday, Thomas invited her to the farmer's market. It's kind of our thing, he explained over text. Lily likes to pick out vegetables like she's on a cooking show. Very serious business. You interested? Rachel stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. A farmer's market meant crowds. It meant being seen together in public, in their neighborhood where people might make assumptions. It meant something, didn't it? But then she thought about saying no, about spending another Saturday alone in her apartment, and the idea made her feel hollow. What time? She texted back. Thomas picked her up at 9. Lily was in the back seat, wearing a sunflower dress and plastic sunglasses, clearly ready for a fashion moment. Rachel, you came. Daddy said you might be too busy, but I knew you'd come. Why did you know that? Rachel asked, turning to smile at the little girl. Because we're friends. And friends show up. The simple logic of children. Rachel glanced at Thomas, who was trying not to smile too obviously. She's got a point, he said. The farmer's market was crowded, but in a good way, full of families and couples and people walking dogs. Thomas navigated through it like a pro, one hand loosely holding Lily's, the other carrying a reusable shopping bag. Rachel walked beside them, and when they stopped at a vegetable stand, Thomas's hand briefly touched the small of her back, guiding her closer so someone could pass behind them. It was such a small gesture. Barely even a touch. But Rachel felt it like electricity, like something significant she didn't quite know how to process. They spent 2 hours wandering through stalls. Lily insisted on smelling every single flower at the flower stand. Thomas bought fresh bread and cheese and strawberries, consulting Rachel on everything like her opinion mattered. At one point, Lily grabbed Rachel's hand to drag her toward a stand selling honey, and Rachel let her, feeling the small warm hand in hers and thinking about trust and how this child gave it so freely. She likes you, Thomas said quietly when Lily was distracted by samples. I like her too. She's a special kid, she is. But I meant, he paused, choosing his words carefully. She doesn't usually warm up to people this fast. She's been through a lot. But with you, it was immediate. Like she knew you were safe. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back. I don't know why. I'm not exactly a natural with kids. Maybe that's why. You don't talk down to her. You listen when she talks. You treat her like a person. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. It means a lot. To both of us. They got lunch at a small cafe, the kind with mismatched chairs and handwritten menus. Lily sat between them, swinging her legs and narrating her food choices. Rachel found herself laughing more than she had in years. Real laughter that came from somewhere deep and genuine. After lunch, They went back to Thomas's house to put away the groceries. It was becoming familiar now, his small kitchen with Lily's drawings everywhere, the comfortable chaos of a life being lived. Rachel helped put things away and it felt natural, easy, like she'd done it 100 times. Want to stay for dinner? Thomas asked. I'm attempting lasagna. Could go great or could be a disaster. 50-50 odds. Those are pretty good odds, Rachel said, and Thomas grinned. But as the afternoon wore on, something shifted inside Rachel. The comfort she'd been feeling started to curdle into panic. This was too good, too easy. Too much like the kind of life she'd convinced herself she couldn't have. What was she doing, playing house with this man and his daughter? What happened when they realized she was too broken, too damaged, too much work? She excused herself to the bathroom and sat on the closed toilet lid, breathing hard, trying to push down the panic rising in her chest. This always happened. She'd start to feel good, start to feel safe, and then her brain would remind her of all the ways it could go wrong. There was a soft knock on the door. Rachel, you okay? Thomas's voice was concerned but not pushy. Yeah, fine. Just needed a minute, silence. Then, can I tell you something through the door? It's going to sound weird, but just hear me out. Okay. When my wife died, I had panic attacks. Like serious ones. Couldn't breathe, thought I was dying, the whole thing. They came out of nowhere, usually when I was starting to feel okay. Like my brain couldn't handle feeling okay when I'd lost so much. Rachel pressed her palm against the door, imagining him on the other side. My therapist told me it was normal, that after trauma your brain gets wired to expect disaster. So when things are good, it freaks out because good doesn't feel safe anymore. Disaster feels safer because at least you know what to expect. He was quiet for a moment. I'm not saying that's what's happening with you. But if it is, I want you to know I get it. And there's no pressure here, Rachel. You can leave right now if you need to. Or you can sit in the bathroom for an hour. Or you can come out when you're ready. Whatever you need. Rachel opened the door. Thomas was leaning against the wall opposite, his expression gentle and understanding. How did you know? She asked. Because I've seen that look before. In the mirror mostly. He straightened. You want to go home? She almost said yes. Almost took the easy out. But then she heard Lily laughing at something in the kitchen, heard the sound of a home being lived in, and she thought about what Thomas had said. About her brain being wired for disaster? No, she said. I want to stay. But I need you to know that I'm not good at this. I'm going to panic. I'm going to want to run. I'm probably going to be difficult and complicated and… Rachel. He said her name so softly. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to try. What if I can't? Then we'll figure it out together. He held out his hand, not grabbing, just offering. One step at a time, remember? She took his hand and let him lead her back to the kitchen. Lily was setting the table, carefully placing napkins at each spot. She looked up when they came in and smiled like nothing was wrong, like Rachel hadn't just had a small breakdown in the bathroom. I'm making it fancy, Lily announced, with the cloth napkins and everything. Dinner was exactly what Thomas had promised, a bit of a disaster, but in the best way. The lasagna was overcooked on one side and underdone on the other. They ate it anyway, and it tasted like home. After Lily went to bed, Rachel and Thomas sat on his porch, watching the street lights flicker on. The evening was cool and quiet. Can I ask you something? Rachel said. Always. Why are you so patient with me? Most people would have given up by now. Told me I was too much work. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. You want the honest answer? Please, because I think you're worth it. Because I've been through hell and I know what it takes to climb out and I see you trying. That takes courage, Rachel. Real courage. He turned to look at her, and maybe because I'm falling for you. Not in spite of the fear and the complications, but because of who you are underneath all that. The real you, the one you're so afraid to let people see. Rachel's breath caught. Thomas, you don't have to say anything. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know, because I think you spend a lot of time believing you're not worth the effort, and I wanted you to hear someone say that you are. She could feel tears on her face now. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Let myself be loved. Let myself love someone back. I'm so scared of getting hurt again that I don't know how to just be. Thomas reached over and took her hand. That gesture that was becoming familiar, becoming safe. You know what I learned? Being scared doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you care. It means it matters. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't be scared. So I'm supposed to just live with being terrified? No. You're supposed to feel the fear and try anyway. Some days you'll be brave. Some days you'll want to run. Both are okay. But you have to keep trying, Rachel. You have to keep showing up. She looked down at their joined hands. His thumb was tracing small circles on her palm, probably without him even realizing it. What if I hurt you? She whispered. What if I'm so messed up that I end up hurting you or Lily? Then we'll deal with it. We'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. That's what people do, Rachel. They mess up and they fix it and they keep going. Is it really that simple? Sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. He smiled at her in the dim porch light. Look, I'm not going to lie and say this will be easy. We both have baggage. We both have scars. But maybe that's okay. Maybe two people who know what hurt feels like can be gentler with each other, more understanding. Rachel leaned her head on his shoulder and he wrapped his arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just being together. The street was quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Above them, stars were starting to appear. I'm going to mess this up, Rachel said quietly. Probably. I will too. That's kind of how relationships work. What if I can't be what you need? What if you already are? She lifted her head to look at him. Thomas, Rachel, I'm not asking you to be anyone other than who you are. The you that panics. The you that's afraid. The you that's trying despite being terrified. That's the you I want. All of it. She kissed him then. It wasn't planned, wasn't thought through. She just leaned in and pressed her lips to his, gentle and tentative and terrified. He kissed her back with the same gentleness, his hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away the tears on her cheek. When they pulled apart, Rachel was shaking. I haven't done that in 8 years. How was it? Scary, really scary. But also, she searched for the word good, really good. Thomas smiled and pulled her close again. We can go as slow as you need. No pressure. No expectations. Just us figuring it out together. Promise? Promise. They stayed on the porch until the night air got too cold, and then Thomas walked her to his car to drive her home. At her apartment, he kissed her goodnight, soft and sweet, and waited until she was safely inside before driving away. Rachel stood in her apartment, touching her lips, feeling the ghost of his kiss. Toast wound around her ankles, meowing for attention. She picked up the cat and sat on the couch, thinking about courage and fear, and how sometimes they were the same thing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Thomas, you did great today. Proud of you. Another text. Lily says goodnight and asks if you'll come to her school play next Friday. No pressure, but she'd love to have you there. Rachel looked at the messages for a long time. A school play meant commitment. It meant showing up, being present, letting Lily count on her. It meant being part of their lives in a real, tangible way. She could say no. She could make an excuse. She could start pulling back now before she got in any deeper. Or she could be brave. I'd love to come, she typed. What time? Thomas's response was immediate. 7. Fair warning, she's playing a tree. She takes it very seriously. Rachel laughed, actually laughed, and felt something loosen in her chest. Can't wait to see it. As she got ready for bed that night, she realized something had shifted. The walls weren't gone. The fear wasn't gone. But for the first time in 8 years, she wasn't letting them win. She was scared, yes. Terrified, actually. But she was also trying. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The school play was everything Thomas had promised and more. Lily stood on stage wearing a brown construction paper trunk around her middle and branches made from pool noodles attached to her arms. She took her role as tree number 3 incredibly seriously, swaying with deep concentration whenever the wind was mentioned in the script. Rachel sat between Thomas and Amy, who'd insisted on coming after Rachel had nervously mentioned it during their weekly call. Her sister had nearly dropped the phone in shock at the news that Rachel was dating someone, attending school plays, and generally participating in life again. She's so cute, Amy whispered, watching Lily sway dramatically. And he seems really nice. You didn't mention how nice his eyes are. Amy, Rachel hissed, but she was smiling. Thomas leaned over. She's nailing it, right? That's definitely the best tree performance I've ever seen. Completely Oscar-worthy, Rachel agreed. After the play, Lily ran up to them, branches askew, face flushed with excitement. Did you see me? Did you see how I swayed? You were magnificent, Rachel told her and meant it. The little girl beamed and threw her arms around Rachel's waist without hesitation. Rachel hugged her back and something in her chest cracked open a little more. Later, at the ice cream shop Thomas had promised Lily as a celebration, Amy pulled Rachel aside while Thomas was ordering. "You look happy," her sister said quietly. "Like actually happy, not just okay or managing, but genuinely happy." Rachel watched Thomas at the counter, Lily on his hip pointing at flavors. I'm also terrified." "That's how you know it's real." Amy squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you, you know. For trying. I know how hard this is for you. What if I mess it up? Then you'll fix it or you won't, but at least you tried. That's more than you've done in years." Amy's expression softened. "He's good for you." They both are. The next few weeks were a study in small braveries. Rachel started keeping a toothbrush at Thomas's house. She met his friends at a casual barbecue and only had one panic attack in the bathroom, which she considered a win. She let Thomas meet Amy properly. Over dinner at a restaurant where her sister interrogated him about his intentions until Rachel kicked her under the table. But it wasn't all smooth. There were hard days too. One evening, about 3 months into whatever they were calling their relationship, Rachel had a bad day. A client had been particularly awful. Her car was still acting up, and she'd spent the afternoon spiraling into old patterns of thinking. When Thomas called to invite her over for dinner, she almost said no. Almost. "I'm not good company tonight," she warned him. "That's okay. Come anyway." She did and immediately regretted it. She was irritable and short-tempered. When Lily asked her to play dolls, Rachel snapped at her. The look of hurt on the little girl's face made Rachel want to disappear. "I'm sorry," Rachel said immediately, kneeling down. "That wasn't okay. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm just having a bad day and I took it out on you." Lily's lip wobbled. "It's okay. Daddy has bad days too." After Lily went to bed, Rachel sat on the couch with her head in her hands. "I shouldn't have come. I told you I wasn't good company." Thomas sat beside her. "You're allowed to have bad days. Not around her. She's already been through so much. She doesn't need my garbage on top of it." "Rachel, look at me." She did reluctantly. "You made a mistake. You apologized. You're human. Lily knows that. She needs to see that adults can mess up and make it right. That's actually a really important lesson. But what if I keep messing up? What if I hurt her? Then we'll talk about it. We'll figure it out. But you can't be perfect all the time." "Nobody can." He took her hand. "You apologized. That's what matters. Now you have to forgive yourself. I don't know how. Practice. Same as everything else." Rachel leaned against him, exhausted. "Why do you put up with me?" "Because you're worth it." "How many times do I have to say that before you believe it?" "Probably a million more." "Better get started then." He kissed the top of her head. "You're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth it."